Steve Kim for Undisputed Champion Network. Welcome once again to Facebook Live, a.k.a. Loeffler's Lodge. And yes, Tom Loeffler joins us again 2 weeks after he broke the announcement of what was going to be going on heading into 2016 and 2017 with one Gennady Golovkin. And Tom, before we get started on current events, 2 weeks ago, you dropped a bit of a bombshell. I don't even think we realized what you had announced. What was the reaction to that in the preceding hours after you left this studio?
I didn't really announce much, but it was just, it was just the conversation I had with Golden Boy, and as far as wanting to do the Canelo fight next year, 2017. So it looks like September 2017, if everything goes the right way, would be the date that would be planned for that fight. And on our side, we have to do what we've always done: just continue to build Gennady with every fight. And the bigger we can build Gennady, the bigger that event is. So right now we're focused on the person that actually signed the contract to get in the ring with Gennady is Kell Brook. Now I'm in a much better mood since I actually have a fight to announce. And I'll tell you, as a welterweight, he showed a lot of heart. And he actually, as Eddie Hearn said, we closed the deal in literally less than 2 days when it looked like the fight with Eubank wasn't going to happen. And Eddie said, I'm going to see if Kell Brook would take the fight, and that's how that progressed.
Tom, let's go back. It was about this time last week. I still remember you had been laying low like Jimmy Hoffa for the better part of about 10 days. You weren't taking anyone's phone calls. Then you texted me late at night last Tuesday, and you said, Steve, I think I might be able to talk about the fight.
Yeah.
Call me tomorrow. And then you went Jimmy Hoffa again. Okay, what now? I'm assuming, were you under the impression with the deadline that the Eubanks were going to sign, and then did that not happen? Is that why it happened? Radio silence once again?
Yeah. No, everything that I had gotten from Eddie, leading up into the 3 weeks was that Eubank was going to sign. It's a huge event over in the UK. The UK fans have been, clamoring for Gennady to come over there to fight. Ever since we had discussions about fighting Carl Froch over there, and. That fight didn't happen. Then we were talking about fighting Billy Joe Saunders. That fight didn't happen. It's very easy, and this is what I tell people. Brook got the same exact offer from Eddie that Eubank had. So if two boxers actually want to fight each other, it's not so complicated to make a fight. And I'm about the easiest person to negotiate with, just to get someone in the ring with Gennady. And it looked like, to answer your question, looked like Eubank was going to happen, and then all of a sudden Eddie ran in all these roadblocks. He said, Tom, sorry to tell you, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But he actually saved the day and said he's going to try to reach out for Kell Brook, because he was having issues making the Brook-Vargas fight, and it's actually a solution for both fighters. Brook couldn't get a high-profile fight at welterweight. We couldn't get a high-profile fight at middleweight. Now this is a massive event over in the UK.
Going back to Chris Eubank Jr., do you believe when it was all said and done, was the father just bluffing?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't have any direct contact with Chris Sr. I saw him over there in London when we were over there for the Dillian White fight, when Dillian White fought Anthony Joshua. And I just happened to be in Europe, and I went over there for the fight, and he was staying at the same hotel, and we had talked about maybe doing the fight at some point. I said, okay, we could do it. I mean, always open for.
Is he as odd
guys.
as he seems? What's a conversation like with Chris Eubank Sr.?
He seems fine to me. I mean, I didn't talk any business points, so I've heard a lot of, people say he's challenging, but, he seemed pleasant to me. It just, again, I didn't get into all the discussions and negotiations with him. That was really Eddie talking to him, and like I said, Eddie told me the whole time it looked like it was going to happen. We were very close, very close. It was the same thing. It was very similar to Chavez Jr. when I was talking to Bob, and Bob kept saying, yeah, we're very close, we're going to sign, and then, because he really wanted to do that fight, he was putting up a lot of money for Chavez to fight Triple G, and that fight didn't happen. And so it was almost like deja vu, where we were going to, basically getting ready to announce the fight, and that didn't happen. And literally, I haven't really told many people this, literally we just changed the name on the contract from Chris Eubank to Kell Brook, and signed the contract that way. And Kell was able to locate a pen to sign the contract.
Tom, was there ever a point in your heart or in your mind that it was going to be this man right here, Chris Eubank? Was there ever a point where you said, oh, this is really going to happen?
Oh, yeah. No, I thought the whole time it was going to happen. You know, I really did. And the way Chris was calling out Gennady after, you know, not only his last fight, but, you know, fights before that, said he wanted to fight Golovkin. So, you know, we're always excited when people say they want to fight Triple G. The problem is a lot of people say they want to fight Gennady. When it comes to actually, like, they might get the fight, then I think they're, like, surprised that they might even get it on their terms. We even, you know, Billy Joe Saunders put out some, you know, enormous figure of what it would take to fight Gennady, and actually worked out a solution with Frank Warren to make it happen, and then we still couldn't make it happen. So, you know, it's one thing to talk about fighting Triple G. It's another thing to actually sign the contract, and that's why we have a lot of respect for, you know, for Kell Brook.
As it relates to BJ Saunders and Chris Eubank, what are the realistic possibilities of getting them in the ring, let's say within 12 to 18 months?
You know, I keep, you know, responding to people on Twitter, you know, when they say, can you make this fight, can you make that fight? I say, you know, that's not a question for our side, it's a question for their side. So, you know, it's really a question for Billy Joe Saunders and Frank Warren, and also for Chris Eubank. You know, whenever someone gets in the ring with Gennady, you know, the economics of the middleweight division has completely changed with Gennady. I remember, if you remember when Gennady made his HBO debut against Proxa, that was supposed to be Daniel Geale fighting Pirog. Mm-hmm. Daniel Geale jumped out of the HBO show to fight Felix Sturm in Germany as world champion for $600,000. I mean, if we offered another champion $600,000 today, it would be tremendous. But, you know, now everyone's asking for $2 million to get in the ring with Gennady, and so, like, the economics has been, like, staggering. And Billy Joe Saunders actually asked for a lot more than that. So, you know, it's one thing to say you want to fight him, but then to price yourself out for a situation that's not realistic, it just doesn't make sense.
Facebook Live on UCN. This is Steve Kim with Tom Loeffler, the managing director of K2 Promotions, talking about the immediate future of one Gennady Golovkin. Final thing on Eubank and Saunders. I know you don't want to get into exact figures or terms, but can you say or confirm, were they offered career-high paydays to face Gennady Golovkin?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what Eddie Hearn said, you know, both for Eubank and, you know, clearly for Saunders, the numbers they were talking about were about double what the highest payday that Gennady's ever made. So, you know, I can't disrespect anyone. I think we have a lot of respect for both fighters. I mean, Saunders, look, he beat Eubanks, he beat Andy Lee. You know, he's proven he's a world champion. He's a world-class fighter. Eubank, you know, since he lost to Saunders, has, you know, I think it's like 3 or 4, you know, great wins. He just defended his British title, and you know, we have respect for both guys. It's just we'd have a lot more respect if fighters actually get in the ring. But it's, you know, you can't really blame any one particular person. You know, whether it's Canelo or Cotto, even Sergio Martinez. We couldn't get Sergio to when Sergio was clearly the #1 middleweight at the time. He was a WBC champion. You know, we wanted to do a unification between Gennady as a WBA champion and Sergio as WBC champion, and we couldn't make that work. So there's a long history of that, and even with Felix Sturm, Gennady was mandatory for over 2 years as a WBA mandatory for Sturm, and we couldn't make that fight. So, you know, I mean, we can only make fights with people that'll get in the ring with them, and we just got to keep going. But, you know, Gennady sold out Madison Square Garden. He sold out the Forum. Those were his last 2 fights, and now it's clearly going to be a sellout. I mean, Eddie Hearn's projecting within an hour it's going to sell out when tickets go on sale to the public on Friday. So if he sells out 3 arenas in 3 major metropolitan cities in 2 countries, I mean, those are things that no fighter in any recent history has done.
Tom, taking a look at Kell Brook, I think he's the best welterweight in the world, but that's an opinion. He has not cleaned out the division. He has no track record at 54, much less 60. Mm-hmm. What about the criticism or the accusation that you guys are doing exactly what Canelo Alvarez did in facing Amir Khan, a career blown-up welterweight?
Look, we're doing what we can to get someone in the ring with him. I mean, you know, if you go down so many different options, there's really no other realistic alternative that's that high profile of a fight. I mean, Kell Brook is clearly, I mean, he's Ring Magazine #1 rated welterweight. He beat Sean Porter. I have a lot of respect for Sean Porter. I was actually at that fight. That was at StubHub Center. And for Kell Brook to come over to the U.S. to beat Sean Porter, who I thought at that time was the best welterweight, And then defended his titles. He couldn't get it. It's a testament to his skill. I think Gennady. Some people say, well, he hasn't fought this guy or that guy, but the fact that so many people have turned down fights with Gennady, it just shows you that if they thought they had a chance to beat him, they would have taken the fight. Gennady with 22 knockouts in a row. There's a reason why people don't want to fight him. And with Kell Brook, it's the same way. I mean, Eddie told me he was having so many issues trying to get a big-name welterweight to come over to the UK and fight him. And like I said before, this really solves the problem. I'll give you some other breaking news. We're gonna have the New York press conference on Thursday. It hasn't been announced yet, but in deference to you, we're gonna announce that. It'll be in New York. Kell Brook's gonna fly over. Gennady's we'll be there in New York. We're gonna go there after the ESPYs, and you'll see when the two fighters stand next to each other. Kell Brook is 5'9", Gennady's 5'10". And Kell Brook probably right now is walking around heavier than Gennady does. Gennady doesn't get very big. He gets 170, maybe 172, 174, like if he eats a big steak. And Kell Brook, from what I understand from Eddie, is over that. So Kell's one of those guys that is a big guy, and he comes down and he can make welterweight. But when you see them physically next to each other, I think that'll answer a lot of questions as to who's actually the bigger fighter.
And Tom, if it was in deference to me, the press conference would be in LA. Okay, but anyway, September 10th, O2 Arena in London will be a sold-out capacity audience. I think that much is made clear. You had said for a couple of years when we first talked about this, you wanted to put the world and world champion. You didn't want to be stuck in one area, one state, one country.
That's correct.
As you went down this process and you'd gone all the way to the 1 yard line with Eubank, and you thought, we finally got a big event in the UK,
yep.
And if it didn't happen, I know that would have been disappointing. How much of an emphasis was it with you to find a way to keep that date in that particular geographic region?
Well, that's the thing. When some people say, well, if Eubank didn't work out, why didn't you fight this guy or that guy? But people don't realize, from a promotional standpoint, when you have a large arena that's a 20,000-seat arena, when you have it on Sky box office, when you have it on HBO, there's so many factors that go on. You can't just say, okay, well, this didn't work. Okay, now I'm going to go to Madison Square Garden and we'll fight this guy. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Arenas are booked. Large arenas like that are booked, 4 months, 6 months out. So that's why, literally when we change, it's all the same terms, the same date, same arena, same TV companies, going from Eubank to Brook. That was really the best solution. I mean, I always have a plan B and a plan C, as I told you before, but they certainly weren't as attractive as putting the fight together with, clearly, I agree with your opinion. I think Kell Brook is the best welterweight out there. And so when you have an undefeated, Kell Brook is 36-0, Gennady is 35-0. You have the best welterweight versus the best middleweight. Gennady is an old school type of guy, and he likes those type of matchups, and it brings out, some of the comparisons of the historic fights from before. And you can't take anything away from Kell Brook. People are talking about Canelo next year, but look, if Gennady loses to Kell Brook, all of a sudden Kell Brook is the top of the sport of boxing, and all the titles that it took us so long to accumulate. Lemieux last year, the WBC title this year. He's had the WBA title for so long, and the IBO title that in one night everything can shift over. And if Gennady has a bad night, you just saw Kovalev last night. He didn't look so great. And so if Gennady has an off night, look, he was sick. He had the flu against Rosado, who should have never been in his class. But it was a very competitive fight, as long as it lasted. And that's why we have to give Kell a lot of credit.
Tom, September 10th in London, I know that you had focused in on that. What was the deadline? I mean, what would have been the situation if there was no Kell Brook? What would you be doing at this point? Would you be working on another fight for another venue?
Yeah. I'd definitely be working on another fight. Luckily, with HBO, with our multi-fight contract with HBO, I would have had a contingency plan with them to come over on the same date here in the U.S. But then, which opponents are you looking at? The opponents certainly wouldn't have been as attractive as Kell Brook. And then you got people criticize, okay, well, Dominic Wade, well, he was an IBF mandatory. Willie Monroe Jr. last year. I mean, that was the best available guy at the time that would make sense. So, we have to go back to giving David Lemieux a lot of credit. He just won the IBF title, and he had the courage and the heart to get in the ring and prove, who was a better middleweight champion. Same thing with Martin Murray. Martin Murray dropped Sergio Martinez. It was, a controversial decision in Argentina. He had a very close fight with Felix Sturm. So for him to sign to get in the ring with Gennady in Monte Carlo, we've got to give him a lot of credit. Even Matthew Macklin, at that time, that was like the biggest name that we had for Gennady at that time when people were saying, well, he hasn't fought anyone. Proxa was a very strong fighter, European champion. And then when he fought Matthew Macklin and dropped him with that signature left hook to the body, it's just been a pattern of Gennady dominating guys that are world-class fighters. Many have never been stopped before. Martin Murray never been stopped before. And for Gennady to have 22 knockouts in a row, that's a huge testament to, he's clearly the biggest and strongest punching fighter in the sport of boxing.
Tom, is that the dichotomy that even with the money raising in terms of what these guys will be getting as a fight purse, has it become more difficult actually to find dance partners for Triple G?
Yeah, if you're confined to a certain economic situation, and when someone wants more than the whole event will generate, you can't put that fight together. That's a way to say we'll fight Gennady, but we won't fight him because our financial demands are too much. If a fighter really thought they could fight Triple G or beat Triple G, they would get in the ring with him all day long. If they know they're not going to win, then they're going to price themselves out, and that's what makes my job even more difficult.
Tom, with that being said, the WBA regular champion is Daniel Jacobs. I think he'd be one of the better middleweight dance partners out there. What has Gilberto Mendoza Jr., who said after the fight with Wade that I'm going to press this issue as my mandatory if the Canelo fight cannot be consummated? Well, that turned out to be true. What is Gilberto doing, along with you, to force that issue?
Look, we have a lot of respect for Danny Jacobs. I think he's one of the top middleweights in the world today. He's got a great story. He's a very likable guy. A lot of respect for him. Great character. We met him in Panama at the WBA convention. He had a tremendous knockout, first-round knockout over Peter Quillen. Whenever you can take out, a fighter like that in one round, that says a lot for his punching power. Right now, he has a fight scheduled, a rematch against Sergio Mora. So we'll have to see. You can't just say, okay, let's make this fight here, because a fight like Danny Jacobs, that would have to be in New York, should be on pay-per-view to make that fight happen. I'm guessing would have to be on pay-per-view for the economics to work out. And so you can't just say, okay, let's make this fight and it's going to be in September. There's a lot of things that lead down to it. Now, if a mandatory is due, like Dominic Wade was due, then you have to make it work. However it works. But we have a good relationship with the WBA, and when that fight is due, then certainly Gennady is probably the most willing fighter to take mandatory obligations.
I believe, or you've told me, that Gennady will fight one more time after September 10th this year, provided everything goes well against Kell Brook.
Right.
Do you have a mental list of opponents for that particular date?
That's the plan. He always wants to fight. He really wants to fight 4 times a year, but 3 times this year is realistic. He's the most active world champion in the sport today. Clearly the only world champion with 22 knockouts in a row. And sure, like you said, if everything goes the right way with September, Gennady and Abel are focused on September 10th, Kell Brook. It's my job to look forward because, like I said, with the arenas, we need TV dates, we need to coordinate with HBO, we need to coordinate which arenas are available. Texas, San Antonio, they want him to come there. Madison Square Garden will have him there anytime he'll fight in New York. The Forum now wants him there every time, and Las Vegas has reached out to us, to have him up there. So it's just a matter of seeing which arenas are available, what dates are available for TV, and then naturally the last component is who will actually sign to get in the ring with them.
Tom, this past weekend you were in Mexico as Gennady Golovkin picked up his WBC belt. Big ceremony with Mauricio Sulaiman.
Yeah.
Be honest, were the large majority of questions, given the fact you're in the home country of Saul Alvarez, was it regarding that potential fight?
Sure, there was many questions about with Canelo and when the fight's going to happen and what the situation is, and I keep saying, look, we'll do the fight as soon as possible. If you want to build the fight, that's fine. If the earliest we can do the fight is September 17th, that's okay for us. It's just you can't force someone to get in the ring. So that's the date we're shooting for. There were also a lot of questions about Gilberto Ramirez. Bob Arum has said that Ramirez would fight Gennady. Gennady would move up to 168 for that fight if that fight can be made. But he just got injured. So there's always a lot of moving parts. It's great to say, okay, we're going to shoot for this guy here, but if the fight can't be made, it can't be made. But I think Ramirez, I really think that fight will be made next year as well, 2017.
Tom, speaking of that situation, when you look at Gennadi's activity, given the fact he'll be in bigger events, at least 1 or 2 a year might be pay-per-view moving forward, are the days of him fighting as many as 4 times a calendar year, are those past?
If we're up to Gennady, he wants to fight 4 times a year. Realistically, if you're looking at the bigger events, the pay-per-view events, a lot of, when he was fighting 4 times a year, that's when we were able to sneak in a fight in Monte Carlo over there, and we weren't doing the whole promotion over here. And he actually took the fight. I think it was against Adama on short notice. He just fought Rosado, or it might have been Nishida, one of the two, and it was, I think, literally 6 weeks after the Rosado fight. We announced
I think it was Curtis
fight.
Stevens, actually.
Or it could have been
right. November of
Stevens,
2013, then January of 2014.
Yeah. Could be one of the two, but there was always, with the Monte Carlo fights, it was always a very short time period. So basically, he fought, went back to training camp immediately, and then flew over to Monte Carlo. So he fought there 3 times, and that was always a great alternative for us because HBO didn't have 4 dates a year for him to fight over here. So for him to be able to go over there, stay active, keep building his star with every fight, and that's been a great venue for him. And now he's personal friends with Prince Albert, Princess Charlene. He's like a very respected person in Monte Carlo, and we've always had good memories of fighting there.
Tom, going back to the situation with Saul Canelo Alvarez and Golden Boy, I think a lot of people were okay with this fight happening next year. I think with the trial, with All-Star Boxing, it didn't seem realistic for 2016. But what is pushing certain people over the edge, and I think I could see their point, why not May of next year? Why go all the way to September?
I think they wanted, from what I understand, is they wanted, have this fight in September. If everything goes the right way, ideally, they would come back in December and then fight in May. And I think with every fight for both sides, it builds the event. Now, at the same time, you can look at cynically, and you never know what's going to happen with Gennady or with Canelo. And the longer you push it out, the more risk it is it doesn't happen. But ideally, look, it's certainly a lot better situation than waiting 5 or 6 years for Floyd to fight Manny. Clearly. And if we can do it for September, that's a big fight. I mean, Gennady also has, look, he's a spokesperson for the World Expo that's going to happen in Astana next year. So that would be in June. Ideally, if we can make that fight happen, that's in a 38,000 seat soccer stadium.
In Kazakhstan.
In Kazakhstan, yeah. And going home, I'm telling people, people want him to fight in Texas and Las Vegas and England. I mean, you can imagine the demand.
Okay, so Tom, hold on. Let's break another story. March, June, and then September 2017.
I don't like to give away the strategy, but that would be the ideal situation.
He didn't deny it either, folks. Right here, Tom Loeffler, Managing Director.
And then, well, don't forget, December. That would be 4 times next year.
Right. Tom, how often are you in contact with Eric Gomez at Golden Boy Promotions in terms of really making this a binding agreement for Canelo and Triple G to fight September of 2017?
Look, I've known Eric for a long time. I've known Oscar for a long time. I promoted or managed Obakar when he fought Oscar at the first fight at Mandalay Bay. So I've known Oscar for a long time. I have a lot of respect for what he's accomplished. Robert Diaz, a Golden Boy, everyone a Golden Boy. We get along with him very well. We're all LA natives, And so I'm in regular contact with Eric. In fact, we oftentimes put some of Golden Boy's fighters on our undercard, or some of our fighters on their undercard. So I'm in regular contact, and we'll have to see. Look, Canelo went down to 154. He's fighting Liam Smith. I mean, that's not an easy fight for Canelo either. So if he fights Liam Smith, and I don't know what their future plans is, if he was going to fight Lemieux, if he's going to fight Billy Joe Saunders, but none of those are easy fights. So that's the thing, Canelo has some tough fights coming up, and with Gennady, if we can do a fight with Ramirez, if we can do a fight with Danny Jacobs, if we can, put some of those other fights together, those aren't easy fights for Gennady either. So, I think the fans will appreciate that, and if we can do it now, it's basically 1 year away. If we can do it in 1 year, I think that's great for the biggest fight in the sport of boxing.
This is Facebook Live on UCN. Steve Kim here with Tom Loeffler. Tom, September 10th, I think, is going to be a very busy day on HBO. You got your fight out there in London, And I'm hearing that Roman Gonzalez is going to challenge WBC 115-pound titles Carlos Cuadras at the Forum. Can you confirm or deny? Spill it, Loeffler.
I can definitely say that that fight's not confirmed. We've been pushing HBO. I think Gennady, I think Chocolatito deserves his own main event HBO date. And I mean, Carlos Cuadras would be a great story if we can make that fight. It's definitely not confirmed as far as the date or the opponent, but I have been pushing Peter Nelson at HBO hard for a date for Roman. And if we could do it like that, that would be, I think, an ideal situation, but it's not confirmed yet.
And Tom, speaking of Roman Gonzalez, you will be seeing him tomorrow, right, with the ESPYs?
Yeah, both Gennady and Chocolatito are nominated for Fighter of the Year at the ESPYs. I mean, this is 2 years in a row now for Gennady. And with Chocolatito, he's getting that recognition now, you know, being on the same shows with Gennady, getting that worldwide recognition as he's 45-0. And if we can make the Cuadras fight, that's a great fight. He would move up another division. If he defends his 112-pound title again, I mean, it's just a statement to how great Chocolatito is. And both of them being nominated for the ESPY's Best Fighter of the Year award is really a compliment to both of them.
Tom, final thing here. Is this date confirmed for Klitschko-Fury, the rematch, October 29th? Is that done?
No, that's a date that they're shooting for. You know, we still need the confirmation of the arena, the official confirmation of the date. You know, that's really between Mick Hennessy and Vladimir's manager, Bernbonte from KMG. They've been in, you know, regular discussions, and as soon as that fight can be finalized, I mean, Vladimir, if it was up to Vladimir, he'd want to get in the ring because he wants to get his titles back as soon as possible. He wants to show that he's still the best heavyweight out there. And look, when he was so dominant for so long, had such a long title reign, when you have one off night, that's what I was saying as far as, you know, all my plans. Let's say if Gennady has an off night against Kell Brook, you know, all the plans I make for the future are out the window. And Vladimir has such a long reign as a heavyweight champion. If he has one bad night against a very awkward, very tricky Tyson Fury, you have to give him a lot of credit. You can't take anything away from Tyson Fury. He's bigger than Vladimir. He has a longer reach. He switches right-handed to southpaw. He moves around a lot. So he earned the victory that night, and Vladimir wants to prove that he's still the best heavyweight in the world.
Tom, there are a lot of reports that Tyson Fury's training camp wasn't exactly the most disciplined or Spartan. And then he pulled out of the fight with an injury, and then he's buying Jaeger bombs for hundreds of British soccer fans.
Yeah.
With that said, is there any skepticism over his injury from the Klitschko camp?
Well, I'm not sure if disciplined or Spartan are the best words to describe Tyson. I mean, when we did that in the press conference to announce the rematch, I mean, he lifted up his shirt and you could see he
looked
really
like the Michelin Man.
Wasn't
had
trained.
The spare tire. Yeah.
But that's not his. I mean, that's not his physique. I mean, he goes in there and look. He's not afraid to fight Vladimir. A lot of guys, like with Gennady, a lot of guys, when they get on the ring with Vladimir and he towers over them, are already kind of psyched out mentally. And there's nothing, it seems, that Tyson's afraid of. So you can't question his heart or, you know, I don't know anything in terms of his training camp or things of that nature. But, you know, the main job on our side is to try to make that fight as soon as possible. And that's a massive event also. I mean, that rematch is going to be much bigger than the first fight.
Okay, we'll take some questions from the fans. And once again, immaculate penmanship from Mike Baca. Here's one from Andrew Kennedy, the president, from Twitter. What does Tom say to those who say GGG is no different from Canelo now? Okay, you've addressed that. Here's the other question. Also, shouldn't this fight be seen as more of a spectacle rather than a competitive prize fight?
Oh, I think when you look, if Kell Brook had you know, a number of defeats, if he'd gotten knocked out before, he's an undefeated welterweight. He's considered the best welterweight in the world, #1 by Ring Magazine. Whenever you got a guy that doesn't know how to lose, neither one of them know how to lose. And again, physically, it's not going to be that big of a size difference. And when you have someone like Kell who's not afraid to fight Gennady, and he brings a speed coming up from the welterweight division, I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I mean, I don't think, personally, biased, I don't think anyone can last 12 rounds with Gennady. So whether it's, look, Dominic Wade was a full-fledged 160-pounder. In fact, before that mandatory, he had never made 160 before. He was always fighting 162, 164. And I'd actually asked Daryl Peoples of the IBF, I said, you sure you can make 160? He's never fought once at 160 in his career. So whether Kell's moving up from 147 or you have full-fledged 160 pounders. You know, look at Marco Antonio Rubio. he went 2 rounds with Gennady, and then the next fight, I think he fought Andre Durrell at 168 pounds, and he went the distance with Durrell. I mean, so there's a lot of durable fighters that Gennady makes the fight look easy, but that doesn't mean it's a mismatch.
And here's one from Big Drama Show on Twitter. Will and when will there be a press conference in the UK for Brooke Golovkin?
UK looks like it's going to be in about 2 weeks. We're just working out the details of that. We wanted to do New York first, just logistically it made more sense, and then after that, probably about 2 weeks, right after the Crawford fight, I think we'll do the press conference in the UK.
No LA, huh? Disappointing.
No, there'll be, Steve, you know us, we'll always do something in LA, but those will be the 2 press conferences in New York and London where both fighters will be present at, but Gennady will host a lunch for you,
oh,
especially.
Good.
Here
Surf
in
and
Los
turf
Angeles.
sounds good, Tom.
Yeah.
Just want to put it in my order. Here's one from Mike Brown on Facebook. What is seen by the team as the highest weight class that Gennady Golovkin might compete in?
Look, we try to make a number of fights at 168 pounds. So I think that's realistic for Gennady. He's a small middleweight. I keep telling people that. I think when he stands next to Kell Brook, they'll see that. Most of the fighters he's fought at middleweight have been bigger than Gennady. But I think 168 pounds is realistic. And there's if we can get, a lot of people have said, well, why haven't you moved up to 168? It's like, look, we can't get anyone at 168 to fight him either. James DeGale hasn't agreed to fight him. Who else is at 168? Ramirez. I think Ramirez fight would probably happen. Chavez, we couldn't get him to fight him at 168. We couldn't get Carl Froch to fight him at 168. So, it's when there's a big and a compelling fight at a higher weight, then he would do that. But he wouldn't move up and stay at 168 pounds because he's a small middleweight. He would go up for that fight specifically and then come back down. And that's my understanding with Kell Brook also. I mean, I know he's a big welterweight, but whether he goes back down to 154 or 147, he'll be the same weight with Gennady on September.
We go back to Facebook, and Ryan Scalia says, Tom, do you have any plans on signing and developing other fighters after the success you've had building up Triple G? I know Ryan Martin's name has been coming up.
We have a lot of respect for Ryan. He's undefeated lightweight. So, look, we're always looking at I don't work with a lot of fighters, but if there's a special fighter that's out there that has seen what we've done with Gennady and the success we've had, and they want to work with us, then I'm always open to looking at signing additional fighters.
Is Ryan Martin someone that you could be signing to some sort of long-term arrangement?
I've had discussions with Ryan and his managers, and whether we can do something with him. I think that he's a special fighter, and we'll see. He was on Triple G's undercard in the last fight, and it was his first fight in a long time. He just gotten out of his contract with SMS, and I think he's got a lot of talent.
And we go back to Facebook. Final question from Ryan Billingsley: will the Golovkin return in December or late November be back in the U.S.? Spill it, Loeffler. Come on, give us something here.
That depends if Chris Eubank agrees to fight.
Oh no, are we going to start that again? Tom, but being serious, again, I know the opponent is a key component in where you place a fight. After what Eddie Hearn was put through with Chris Eubank Sr., do you think he wants to go through that again so soon?
I have a feeling, I don't know how those whole negotiations went, but I have a feeling that they thought they had a much stronger position than they really had, and when they couldn't, when they started asking for a lot of different things, Eddie's like, we can't run the promotion that way, So, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, that would be a great fight. Or, coming back here, the plan has always been, the priority is to have him fight here in the U.S. with his keeping his international appeal. And so far for the last, last 4 years, he's always had one international fight in addition to the fights that he's had over here in the States. So if we bring him back here and we can put a great fight together, that would be great on HBO. If we can do another, look, Carl Froch might see this fight and say, I'm coming out of retirement and fight Gennady. So you can't rule anything out, but we would definitely try to make the highest profile fight. And
Tom, for my friends in Texas who would kill me if I didn't ask you, within the next year, will we see a Golovkin fight in the Lone Star State?
I don't know within the next year, but certainly, look, a guy like Gennady has no problem fighting in any venue, any city, as long as it makes sense. You know, the Canelo fight, if that fight can happen in Dallas, Texas, in Cowboy Stadium, that's a perfect venue. Gilberto Ramirez in San Antonio, I don't think it gets any better than that. So, you know, it's wherever we can. The good thing about Gennady, a lot of fighters just like to fight in one city, in one state, and Gennady doesn't care where he fights. He's had so much international experience in the amateurs that it doesn't affect him traveling and locations where he fights. So it really depends on the best location, but I think San Antonio would make a lot of sense with Gilbert Ramirez.
All right, Tom, I know you got a busy day ahead of you. I want to thank you for your time as always.
Thanks,
This is
Steve
Kim for UCN on Facebook Live.